The sun was setting over Los Angeles when Keanu Reeves quietly stepped into the small animal rescue center tucked away between the glassy towers. He wasn't wearing sunglasses. He wasn't surrounded by security. No one noticed him at first. He was just a man in a worn black hoodie, jeans, and a calm expression that looked like it had weathered 1,000 storms. Keanu had always loved animals. He had grown up with stray dogs, feeding them scraps when he could, and petting every cat that let him close. But this visit wasn't just for love. It was for something deeper, something that had been pulling at his heart ever since he finished filming last month. He felt empty. The applause, the flash of cameras, the screaming fans, none of it filled the silence that had grown inside him. He thought maybe a quiet creature in need might help him remember what real connection felt like again. The shelter was nearly closing. A young volunteer named Lisa looked up as he walked in. "We're almost done for the day," she said, not recognizing him. "I know," Keanu replied softly. I was wondering if I could sit with the animals for a bit." There was something about the way he spoke, humble, sincere, like he wasn't asking for special treatment. Lisa tilted her head, studied his face, and her eyes widened slowly. "Wait, are you?" He smiled gently. "Just a guy who wants to spend some time with a friend. Maybe find one." She nodded, still surprised. "Of course, come this way." She led him to a quiet room where some of the more sensitive animals were kept. Cats that didn't trust easily, dogs that flinched at sudden movements. This wasn't the room they showed to donors or celebrities. This was the room they kept hidden, where the forgotten animals stayed. Keanu walked to the far corner and sat, cross-legged on the floor. A small tabby cat with one ear missing peered out from under a bench. A dog with cloudy eyes pressed against the wall, trembling slightly. He said nothing, just waited. His presence was calm, grounding, like an anchor in a chaotic sea. After a few minutes, the tabby crept closer. Keanu didn't move. She sniffed his shoe, then touched it with her paw. He slowly reached out, palm open. She jumped into his lap. That was the moment Lisa knew he wasn't just playing kind. He meant it. But outside, something else was happening. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the shelter. Out stepped a woman in a tight designer dress, heels too tall for the cracked pavement, and sunglasses that didn't quite hide the way she looked down on everything. Her name was Danica Rowe. She was rich, powerful, and used to being obeyed. "I called earlier," she told the receptionist, brushing dust off her coat like the very air annoyed her. "I'm here to adopt." "Yes, Ms. Rowe," the staff member said nervously. "You asked for a show-quality cat. Follow me." Danica walked behind her, her heels clicking like a countdown. In her arms was a purse. In the purse was a tiny white poodle with a jeweled collar and a personality that matched its owner. As Danica entered the animal room, her perfume hit the air like a chemical bomb. The cats hissed. The dogs whimpered. Even Lisa winced. Keanu looked up as Danica stepped in. Their eyes met. She paused. "You're Keanu Reeves," she said, half question, half command. He nodded politely, but didn't stand. "What are you doing here?" she asked, almost amused. "Just spending time," he said simply, stroking the cat in his lap. "With that thing," she sneered, pointing at the one-eared tabby. Keanu looked down at the cat and smiled. "Her name is Junie. She's lovely." Danica rolled her eyes. "I want something elegant, graceful, not whatever that is." A staff member brought out a long-haired Siamese. It was beautiful, sure, but scared. Its fur was too shiny, its eyes too wide. It had been abandoned by a model who traveled too often. "This one?" the staff asked. Danica took one look and nodded. "That'll do." She reached out, tried to grab the cat, too fast. The cat panicked. In a flash, its claws lashed out and scratched the nearest figure standing calmly nearby, Keanu. His wrist was bleeding. 3 thin red lines trailing down his skin. Gasps filled the room. Danica stepped back, horror on her face. "Oh my God, it attacked you." Keanu looked down at his arm, then at the frightened cat, now trembling behind a crate. "She was scared," he said softly. "That's all." Danica narrowed her eyes. "You should sue, or at least demand they put that one down. It's dangerous. Silence. Keanu stood slowly. Not angry, not dramatic, just quiet. He walked over to the crate, crouched low, and whispered something no one else could hear. Then he turned to the staff. "I'd like to adopt her." Everyone froze. "Sir," the staff tried to explain, "that one hasn't been trained yet. She's not good with people, I know," Keanu said gently. "But maybe she just needs someone who won't run away the first time she scratches." Danica scoffed. "What kind of man adopts a cat that attacks him?" Keanu looked straight at her, his eyes steady. "Maybe a man who's been hurt before and still believes in second chances." No one spoke. Danica opened her mouth, closed it. Then, almost as if trying to save her image, she laughed. "Whatever, keep your monster cat. I'll take the pretty one." But the pretty one didn't want her. The Siamese jumped out of the staff member's arms and ran behind Keanu. Danica single quotes S mouth twitched. "Fine," she said coldly. "I'll buy one. A real one, not this garbage." She turned and stormed out, her heels echoing one last time. Keanu looked down. The Siamese was now curling beside Junie, the one-eared tabby. Both were purring. "I guess I'm taking both," he said softly. Lisa blinked. "Are you sure?" He smiled. "They chose me, not the other way around." And just like that, Keanu Reeves, the man the world thought they knew, walked out of that shelter with two fragile souls in his arms, leaving behind a scratch, a stunned crowd, and a lesson no one would forget. But this was just the beginning. What Keanu didn't know was that Danica Rose's story wasn't over, and in just a few days, she would come back, this time, crying. The next morning, Keanu Reeves sat on the floor of his quiet living room. Sunlight poured through the windows, casting soft beams across the wooden floor. Junie, the one-eared tabby, was curled up on his chest, her tiny purrs rising and falling like a song only he could hear. Beside him, the once terrified Siamese now watched birds through the glass. Her name was Maru now. He whispered it like a lullaby, and every time, her ears twitched. Keanu had never felt this kind of stillness before. Not on movie sets, not in interviews, not even in the quietest moments of his solitary travels. This was different. It was healing. He placed his hand gently on Junie's back and thought about the shelter, the faces, the tension, the scratch, and most of all that woman, Danica Rowe. He hadn't meant to humiliate her, and yet, she had looked at those animals like decorations, like accessories. But something about the way she had paused before walking out stayed in his mind. Something in her eyes wasn't just arrogance. It was fear, or maybe pain. In pain, Keanu understood all too well. Meanwhile, Danica sat in the back seat of her luxury car, the windows up, her assistant quiet beside her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the scratched screen of her phone. Someone had taken a photo at the shelter. It had already gone viral. Keanu Reeves adopts cat after getting scratched, says, "Everyone deserves a second chance." Millions of likes, thousands of comments. And buried beneath all the admiration, one phrase kept appearing, "unlike that woman in heels." She threw the phone on the seat and leaned back, covering her face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had come to adopt a cat for a magazine shoot, some polished feature about powerful women and their exotic pets. The article was due in 2 days, but the Siamese had refused her. The scratched man had become the story, and now she was the villain. But deep inside, Danica's anger wasn't really about the comments. It was about what that man said. Maybe a man who's been hurt before and still believes in second chances. Those words cut deeper than she expected, more than the online hate, more than the embarrassment, because she had also been hurt before, years ago, before she became Danica Rowe, the brand, the businesswoman, the face on billboards. She had been just a girl from a small town living in a cramped apartment with a mother who worked 3 jobs and a stray cat who slept on her bed every night. Her name was Poppy. That cat had saved her during the worst nights, when her stepfather yelled and doors slammed and food was cold. But one day, after she finally left that house and started modeling in the city, she couldn't take Poppy with her. The landlord said no pets. She tried to sneak her in, tried to hide her. But one day Poppy got out. She never came back. Danica had cried that night. She had never cried like that again. She swore to herself she would never be that weak again. Never be attached. Never let anyone, even a cat, break her heart like that. But Keanu's words, and those two fragile creatures, cracked something she had sealed for years. That night, unable to sleep, Danica did something she hadn't done in a long time. She Googled him, not for his movies, not for the headlines, but for his interviews, the quiet ones. She watched a short video clip, one where he talked about loss, about losing people he loved, and how he found peace not in forgetting, but in being kind to others. Grief stays with you, he said, but so does kindness. She clicked pause, and for the first time in years, she whispered to herself, I'm tired. The next morning, Keanu was at the vet. Juni had a small scar on her paw that looked old, but still sensitive. Mara was adjusting well, but she had a strange way of twitching whenever a door closed loudly. They've both been through a lot, the vet said gently, but they're healing fast, especially under your care. Keanu smiled and nodded. They're healing me too. As he stepped out into the parking lot, he noticed a familiar car parked nearby, and standing beside it, wearing a simple sweater instead of designer labels, was Danica. For a moment, neither moved. Then she walked toward him. Hi, she said quietly, not demanding, not cold, just human. Hi, Keanu replied. She looked at the carriers beside him. They look better. They feel safer now. She nodded, then looked down. I wanted to say sorry. He waited. I was rude, arrogant, and more than that, I judged something I didn't understand. Keanu didn't respond immediately. He just looked at her, really looked at her, the way only someone who's learned to read pain without asking can do. It's okay, he said gently. Sometimes we need a reminder. Life gives them in strange ways. She chuckled softly. That scratch definitely worked. Keanu smiled. Wanna come say hi to them? Her eyes widened slightly. Really? Sure, just move slow. Maru's still learning trust. Danica crouched beside the carriers. Juni meowed softly. Maru backed up a little but didn't hide. Slowly, Danica offered her hand. Juni sniffed it. And then, as if recognizing something, maybe the smell of a past long buried, she rubbed her head gently against Danica's fingers. A tear escaped Danica's eye. I had a cat once, she said, her voice breaking. She was the only one who stayed when everything else fell apart. Keanu didn't ask questions. He just listened. Then he said, sometimes they come back in new forms. Maybe not to stay forever, but to help us heal. Danica looked up. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. No, she said. Not for the cats. For not judging me. Everyone online. They don't know me. But you. Keanu nodded. I didn't need to know your past. I saw your eyes, and I've seen those eyes before. She stood slowly. I want to change. I don't know how yet, but I want to. Keanu smiled. Start small. Feed someone who can't pay you back. Adopt kindness before animals. She laughed through tears. Do you always say stuff like that? Only when it matters. Just then, a woman ran up. She held a phone. Excuse me, were you to just... Keanu gently held up his hand. Please, no pictures. Just let this moment stay quiet. The woman paused, then nodded. Of course. As Keanu watched Danica walk back to her car, something inside him softened too. Maybe second chances weren't just for cats, that maybe they were for people like her. And maybe, just maybe, the next time someone looked at her with judgment, she would remember the scratch, the cats, and the man who didn't flinch. But life wasn't done teaching either of them, because a few days later, something happened at a cafe that would draw the world's attention again. And this time, the roles would be reversed. The sunlit cafe was hidden between tall trees and flower beds. A small place known more for its heart than its menu. It wasn't fancy, no designer chandeliers, no velvet seats, just wooden tables, mismatched mugs, and a kind woman named Ruby who ran it all with flour on her apron and warmth in her smile. Keanu discovered the cafe by accident a few months ago. One rainy afternoon, his bike broke down nearby, soaked and cold. He walked in, and Ruby served him hot tea before asking for his name. She never even noticed he was the Keanu Reeves, or maybe she did, but it didn't matter to her. Since that day, he came in quietly, sometimes to write, sometimes just to think. This was one of the few places he could breathe without being watched. Today, he brought Junie and Maru in their little carriers. The vet had said they needed sunlight and calm air. Ruby had already prepared a little space on the side patio with cushions and bowls. She waved at Keanu as he entered. "They doing better?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Much better." He smiled. "Thank you for the corner table. You don't need to thank me. This place needs souls like yours." Keanu chuckled and walked to the patio. He set down the carriers, opened them gently, and both cats stepped out slowly but curiously. Junie sniffed the flowers. Maru squinted at the sun. It was peaceful. Until a car pulled up. Danica stepped out. But this time, something was different. She wasn't wearing heels. Her hair was tied up. Her coat was soft, simple. And in her arms was a cardboard box, not a purse. When she saw Keanu, she paused. For a moment, it looked like she was about to turn around. But then she breathed in, straightened her back, and walked up the steps. Keanu looked up. "Hey, hi," she said, almost shyly. "Didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to come." She looked around. "But I heard this place has a heart, and I'm trying to follow those more." Ruby stepped out, glanced between them, and said, "Welcome, sweetheart. Come sit." Danica nodded and sat beside Keanu, though not too close. The box she held made a slight noise. Keanu noticed. "What's in there?" he asked. "A kitten," she said quietly. "I found him in a dumpster behind a building. Someone tied him in a bag. I couldn't leave him." Keanu's eyes softened. "You rescued him?" "I think he rescued me." She opened the box gently. Inside was a tiny black kitten, barely 4 weeks old, its eyes too big for its face. "He won't eat," she said. "He's scared of everyone." Keanu reached out. Slowly, the kitten hissed but didn't back away. Junie walked over and sniffed the box. Maru stayed close, but watched with gentle eyes. "He needs time," Keanu whispered, "and someone who's patient." "I've never been patient," Danica said, "but I'm learning." Just then, a waiter brought over teas and a plate of soft biscuits. Ruby watched from the doorway. Keanu took a sip and asked, "Why are you really here?" Danica looked down. Her fingers played with the rim of the box. "Because last night," she said, "I saw an old picture of myself, a girl hugging a cat, and I didn't recognize her. I want to find her again." Keanu nodded. "You're already on the path." Just then, a camera clicked. A young man in a hoodie across the street had been filming them through the trees. He lowered his phone and looked nervous as Keanu's eyes met his. Keanu stood, calm but firm, and walked to the sidewalk. "Hey, man," he said gently. "I'm sorry," the man stammered. "I wasn't gonna post it. It's you, and her, and the cats. People would love this, I know." Keanu said softly, "But love doesn't always mean good." The man looked confused. "Sometimes, moments are precious because they're not shared," Keanu continued, "because they belong to the people in them." The man's hands dropped. His eyes softened. "I understand." He deleted the photo. "I'm sorry." Keanu smiled and patted his shoulder. "Thank you." As he returned to the patio, Danica was holding the kitten against her chest. Junie had climbed onto her lap, purring. Ruby brought out a bowl of warm milk and gently placed it on the floor. The kitten sniffed, and for the first time, it drank. "He trusts you," Ruby said. "I think he's just hungry." Danica replied, laughing softly. But Ruby shook her head. "Cats don't eat unless they feel safe. It's not about hunger, it's about faith." Keanu looked at Danica and saw something he hadn't seen before. Not strength, not elegance, but grace. Real grace. The kind that comes after falling and choosing to rise different. "What's his name?" Keanu asked. "I haven't thought of one yet," she said. "Maybe Echo." "Echo?" Ruby asked. "Yeah," Danica said, stroking his fur. "Because he reminds me of a voice I thought I lost, a softer one." Keanu smiled. "Then Echo is perfect." But just as the moment settled, Ruby's phone rang. She picked it up, and her face changed. "Is everything okay?" Keanu asked. Ruby looked pale. Someone broke into the shelter last night. They hurt 2 of the dogs, took some of the cats. Danica gasped. Keanu stood. Let's go. And just like that, without thinking of headlines, roles, or reputations, a woman once judged for being heartless and a man known for his gentleness stood side by side, ready to face something dark for the sake of creatures that had no voice. The shelter was in chaos, and what they would find inside would change both of them forever. The moment Keanu and Danica arrived at the shelter, they knew something was wrong. The door was half open, the lock broken and dangling like a tooth knocked loose. The inside smelled different, no longer like fur and food, but like fear. Lisa, the young volunteer who had helped Keanu during his first visit, sat on a bench outside. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling as she clutched a clipboard. Beside her, one of the smaller dogs, Milo, whimpered softly and licked her fingers. Lisa, Keanu said gently, kneeling down. What happened? She looked up, her voice shaky. Someone broke in last night. They didn't steal anything valuable, just animals, 7 cats, 2 dogs, all purebred, high-value types, like they knew exactly what they were after. Keanu's heart clenched. Were any of the animals hurt? She nodded. Yes, 2 older dogs tried to fight them off. They're in the vet room now, but we don't have the funds for proper treatment. And her voice cracked. They took Luna. Keanu didn't know who Luna was, but Danica did. The blind Persian? Danica whispered. The one that always curled into your sweater. Lisa nodded slowly. Danica sat down beside her, too stunned to speak. She had held that cat just days ago, feeling its tiny body press against her as if begging not to be left alone again. Now someone had taken her for profit. I don't understand, Lisa said. Who would do this? Why take from a shelter? Keanu stood up, his mind already working. Because these animals are seen as property to some people, not souls. Danica looked at him. We have to do something. He nodded. And we will. They spent the next hour reviewing security footage. The camera above the front door had been smashed, but a tiny backup camera near the parking lot had survived. It showed a black van pulling up at 2:17 a.m., 3 masked figures. Fast. Practice. Keanu leaned in. Pause it there. Lisa froze the frame. On the driver's wrist, barely visible, was a tattoo, a crooked paw print. Danica blinked. That's the same tattoo my old neighbor had. Who? Keanu asked. A guy named Leo. He ran illegal shows in an abandoned warehouse near Griffith. He used to brag about selling rare breeds. I thought he was lying. I thought no one would actually buy from a place like that. Keanu's voice dropped. People do worse for less. He turned to Lisa. Can you trust me? She nodded. Double quotes. Can you keep this place locked tight tonight? Stay with the injured dogs. I'll find the others. But how? She asked. Keanu looked at Danica. She stood slowly. I know where the warehouse is. Keanu turned to Ruby, who had arrived moments ago with a bag of supplies. Can you take care of Echo? Ruby smiled warmly and reached for the kitten's box. With my life. Keanu nodded. Good. Because tonight, we find Luna. The drive to the warehouse was quiet. The sky was dark, stars hidden behind city haze. Keanu drove without music, his hands calm on the wheel. Danica sat beside him, her fingers clutching her seatbelt. She had been in many cars with powerful men who talked loud, who took calls during dinner, who looked at her like a trophy. But this man, he listened, he observed, and somehow, that silence felt louder than any speech she had ever heard. Do you think we'll find them? She asked finally. Keanu looked ahead. I don't know, but if we don't try, no one will. They parked a few streets away from the warehouse. It looked abandoned from the outside. Cracked windows, rusted fence, no signs of life. But as they approached, faint barking echoed from within. Keanu turned to Danica. Stay here. No, she said firmly. I'm not leaving. He stared at her, saw the same fire that had once been arrogance, now transformed into something pure courage. He nodded. They crept along the side wall. There was a back door, unlocked. Inside, the air was thick. Cages lined the walls. Animals, cramped and terrified, whimpered in the dark. A man sat at a desk, watching a screen. "That's him," Danica whispered. "Leo." Keanu stepped forward, quietly. Leo didn't hear him until it was too late, you know. Keanu said, "There are better ways to make a living." Leo spun around, reaching under his desk. But Keanu grabbed his wrist, twisted gently, and disarmed him in one smooth motion. No punches, no shouting, just calm force. Leo groaned. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's been scratched before," Keanu said, "and still believes in second chances." Leo laughed bitterly. "You think they'll thank you for this? They'll come back." Keanu pressed a button on the wall. Lights flickered on. And behind him, Danica was already filming. "They won't need to," she said, "because the whole world is about to see this." She turned on a live stream from her social account, the same account once filled with fashion photos and shallow quotes. Within minutes, thousands joined, then tens of thousands. Danica showed the cages, the animals, the tattoo. She turned the camera on herself. "I was once the kind of person who looked away, who thought things like this weren't my problem. But today, I found the girl I used to be, the one who cried over a missing cat, and I'm not looking away anymore." The comments flooded in. "Thank you. I'm crying. Is that Keanu Reeves behind you? Where is this? How do we help?" Sirens blared in the distance. Keanu nodded. "Time to go." They left quietly. The police handled the rest. The animals were rescued. Luna was found. She leapt into Lisa's arms the next morning, purring despite her blindness. And the world had seen a different Danica Rowe, one who wasn't defined by luxury or headlines, but by redemption. But the story didn't end there, because just when things began to settle, someone knocked on Keanu's door. A young boy, holding something wrapped in cloth. And what he carried would change everything. Keanu Reeves opened the door slowly. The morning light poured into the hallway, cutting through the silence of his home. Outside stood a boy maybe 10 years old with messy hair, dirty shoes, and eyes that looked older than they should have. He held something wrapped in a faded red cloth, gripping it tightly like a treasure or a secret. "Are you Keanu?" the boy asked, barely above a whisper. Keanu nodded. "I am." The boy took a step forward and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a tiny orange kitten, no more than a few weeks old, shivering and covered in grime. Its eyes were crusted shut, and its breathing was shallow. "I found him in a trash bin," the boy said, "behind my school. The other kids laughed and threw rocks, but I couldn't leave him." Keanu knelt slowly. "What's your name?" "Milo." Keanu smiled gently. "That's a good name." Milo didn't smile back. He looked down. "I don't have anywhere to go. They said you help animals. I thought maybe you could help him." Keanu looked into the boy's face and saw something familiar. Not just sadness, not just pain, but the same kind of quiet strength he had seen in Junie, in Maru, in Echo, and even in Danica. The strength to care, even when the world tells you not to. "Come inside," Keanu said softly, "both of you." He led Milo to the kitchen and warmed up a soft blanket for the kitten. Maru and Junie peeked round the corner, curious but calm. Echo meowed from his little box near the window. Milo sat on a stool, watching silently as Keanu filled a bowl with warm formula and gently touched the kitten's lips with a drop. It didn't move at first. Then, slowly, it swallowed. A tear rolled down Milo's cheek. "I thought he was gonna die." Keanu placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You gave him a chance. That's all any of us can do." Milo looked around the house. It wasn't filled with gold or glitter. It was soft, warm, filled with quiet, energy, and gentle sounds. "Is this where you live?" "Yes," Keanu said. "But more importantly, it's where I feel alive." The boy whispered, "Can I stay here for a bit?" Keanu hesitated, not because he didn't want to help, but because he knew this was bigger than a warm couch or a bowl of food. He called Danica. Within 20 minutes, Danica arrived. She had been volunteering at the shelter all week, organizing supplies, walking dogs, even staying overnight when animals had nightmares. She looked different now, not in appearance, but in spirit. Lighter, freer. When she saw Milo, she crouched beside him and smiled. "Hi," she said. "I'm Danica." The boy nodded. "This guy's a good man," she whispered, pointing at Keanu. But he's not great with cereal. I make better pancakes. Milo laughed for the first time. Danica looked at Keanu. He nodded. They took the kitten to the vet together. Milo stayed quiet the whole ride, but his hands never left the blanket. The vet, an older woman with tired eyes, examined the kitten and smiled. He's a fighter, she said. Malnourished, dehydrated, but not broken. Milo looked up. Can I name him? Of course, Keanu said. The boy thought for a long moment. Courage, Danica smiled. Perfect. They returned to the cafe that afternoon. Ruby had set up a small celebration. The shelter had just received donations from thousands of people inspired by Danica's video. Dozens of animals were already being fostered. This is because of you two, Ruby said, handing them tea. And the animals thank you. But Keanu shook his head. This is because people saw truth and chose to act. Danica smiled. And because a man let a cat scratch him without turning away. They sat on the patio again. Milo fed Courage with a tiny bottle. Maru lay across Keanu's feet, and Echo curled in Danica's lap. A quiet peace fell over them. But it didn't last. Long. A black car pulled up across the street. A man in a suit stepped out. Not a journalist, not a fan. Mr. Reeves, he said. Approaching. Keanu stood. Yes, my name is Mr. Bennett. I represent the estate of Evelyn Gray. Keanu frowned. I'm sorry. I don't know her. The man pulled out a sealed letter. She passed away last week, but in her final will, she left something to you. Danica and Milo looked on. Confused. Why me? Keanu asked. The man nodded at the kitten in Milo's arms. Because you once donated anonymously to her clinic when it was about to shut down. 10 years ago. Your kindness saved her rescue work. She never forgot. He handed Keanu the envelope and walked away. Inside was a key. And a note. For the man who believes in second chances. This place now belongs to you. May it heal others, as you have. The address written below. A 4-acre animal sanctuary outside the city. Keanu looked at Danica. She blinked. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? He smiled. Let's build something together. But what they built would not only rescue animals. It would rescue people. Because what came next would turn that sanctuary into a safe haven for something even more powerful than healing. Hope. 6 months later, the gates of Poppy's refuge stood wide open, painted soft green with vines curling gently around the edges. The name Poppy's Refuge had been Danica's idea. She wanted to honor the first cat she ever loved, the one she had lost in her youth but never truly forgotten, the one that reminded her what it meant to feel safe. What once had been an old, overgrown property now flourished with life, walking paths wound through wildflowers. Small cabins housed rescued animals, each painted by volunteers with care. In the center of the land was a large wooden barn, transformed into a healing space. 1 part clinic, 1 part classroom, 1 part sanctuary for the lost. Keanu stood by the gate, holding Courage, now a healthy, bright-eyed kitten full of mischief and love. Beside him, Milo laughed as Maru leapt into his arms. Echo trailed behind, forever calm, forever watching. Junie, the one-eared tabby who started it all, sat by Keanu's feet, her fur glistening in the golden light. Dozens of people roamed the fields, children petting puppies, teenagers reading books to shy cats, elderly visitors sitting on benches, watching birds. It was more than an animal shelter now. It was a place for broken hearts to meet broken paws and heal together. Danica had changed, not just in how she looked but how she lived. She had sold her designer condo and moved into a small cottage near the sanctuary. Every morning, she made breakfast with Ruby, who had become like a sister. Every afternoon, she walked with the animals and taught visitors about compassion. She gave lectures not about fashion, but about forgiveness. And every evening, when the sky turned orange and the fields grew quiet, she sat with Keanu beneath the old oak tree at the edge of the hill. The tree overlooked everything they had built, everything they had become. Do you ever think, she asked one evening, how strange it is that all of this started because a cat scratched you? Keanu smiled. I think about it every day. She laughed. You're not mad she attacked you. He looked down at Junie, now curled on his lap. She didn't attack me, she woke me up. Danica looked at the people below, the boy with the limp who now helped train dogs, the shy girl who painted each cabin door, the mother who brought her autistic son every Saturday because animals understood him when words didn't. We helped them, she said. Keanu nodded. And they helped us. One afternoon, something unusual happened. A woman showed up at the gate. She wore a scarf around her head, her clothes plain, her eyes tired. She didn't speak, just held out a folded piece of paper and placed it in Keanu's hands. He opened it slowly. Inside was a picture of a girl young, holding a tabby kitten on her chest, her eyes bright with hope. On the back, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Her name was Poppy. You gave me hope again. Thank you." Keanu looked up, but the woman was already gone. He ran after her, but she had disappeared into the trees like a whisper. He showed the note to Danica. Her hands shook. "That was my mother," she whispered. "What? I haven't seen her in years. She left when I became someone I wasn't, when I stopped listening. She must have seen the news, the videos." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Keanu wrapped his arms around her. "Then she saw the real you again," he said. The sanctuary became more than a home for animals. It became a haven for truth, for people like Milo, who was officially adopted by Danica and Keanu after child services confirmed what everyone already knew, that love doesn't always look like a traditional family. For teens who had aged out of foster care and needed jobs with meaning. For veterans who came to brush horses and feed goats because it quieted their nightmares. And for strangers who carried guilt and grief, needing only a soft paw and a safe place to finally breathe again. Years passed. The world kept spinning. Keanu kept acting, but with a different heart. He said no to more roles and yes to more life. Danica started writing not columns about shoes, but letters to girls who had lost themselves in noise. Letters that said, "You are enough, even when you're not perfect." Especially then, Milo grew strong, brave, kind. He once told a classroom, "Courage isn't just my cat. It's what happens when you protect someone smaller than you." And Poppy's refuge grew, not into a business, but into a movement. People flew from different countries just to sit under the oak tree and cry, because something about the story, the scratched hand, the judgment, the rescue, the redemption reminded them that no one is ever too broken to begin again. One evening, Keanu found a drawing taped to the barn wall. A child had sketched 3 figures, a man with long hair, a woman with a smile, and a boy holding a kitten. Above them were words written in blocky, uneven letters. "Heroes don't always wear capes, sometimes they wear cat scratches." Keanu smiled, and he whispered the words he once said to Junie the first night they met. "We're not perfect, but we're not done yet." And from that little scratch, a whole world of kindness was born.